So, our office was formed just several years ago. We're relatively new to the county. And our main charge as an office was to create a regional sustainability plan for the county from the Board of Supervisors. So as we were thinking about that, this is sort of how we conceived of the plan and how the Board of Supervisors directed us to look at it. We wanted it to be aspirational. So we wanted to present a vision for where the county was going. I'm sure a lot of you know that the county has done many things sustainability related, but up till now, we didn't sort of have that centralized vision really expressing where we were and where we wanted to go. So that was one of the goals of the plan. In addition to that, we wanted it to be a comprehensive plan. So we're not just thinking about sort of traditional environmental sustainability topics, but also social equity and economy and workforce development as well. Those three traditional stools were legs of the stool of sustainability, and making sure that we're weaving those throughout. We also wanted it to be long-term, of course, and regional was a big part of it as well. So not just the county unincorporated areas, but thinking about the region as a whole and where we wanted it to go. Because as you all know, a lot of these challenges that we're facing just don't really follow jurisdictional lines, right? And we do work together as a region in a lot of ways. The plan is really, because of the comprehensiveness of it, it is really like a strategic plan. So it sets out a vision, but it doesn't necessarily include a detailed implementation strategy. So I'll talk to you at the end of the presentation about where we're sort of going next as far as that goes. But yeah, and then, just to touch on this in terms of the regional aspect of it, it does deal with a lot of things that are not within the county's control, but those are areas where we're really looking for collaboration and partnership as we're seeking to implement this vision. All right, so as I mentioned, it is comprehensive, and so just to give you a sense of the types of topics that we do cover, there is a lot of sort of that traditional environmental sustainability topics like water, energy, climate, but then we also are looking at things like public health and well-being, economy and workforce development, and of course housing. And then key to this too was that we wanted to make sure that equity and resilience were woven throughout the entire plan, because we did see those things as just really things that really cut across all of these topics. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the plan development. It was really important to us that the plan be built off a robust stakeholder process because we wanted it to reflect the values and priorities of the region overall. So in order to do that, we did a lot of meetings. Over almost a 2-year process, we had sort of 2 phases of the plan development. The first was before the plan was drafted, and we brought together a lot of our sort of also already sort of expert stakeholders, so our nonprofits, our private sector business leaders, our agency staff who are already engaged in these kinds of issues. We did a number of workshops that were topically based. We also brought together the cities for a couple of summits. That's actually something that we're going to continue doing throughout the life of the plan, is to bring together our city partners to work on implementation. We also, after there was a draft plan in place, went out to the different supervisorial districts and made sure to talk to the public and through a series of community fairs. So with all of that process, we generated about 6,000 recommendations. We luckily had a wonderful consulting team who helped us with this, and ultimately turned this into a plan that is based around 12 goals. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. That got cut off, but just again to mention, put a pin in that, it was adopted by the Board of Supervisors in August, so that was an exciting milestone. All right, I will skip over this. Looks like this might be, this might be a different draft than I had. Awesome. Okay, so sorry about that. But so just to talk a little about this, the board motion, when it was adopted, created a couple of directions for us, which, again, I'll talk a little bit more at the end. But it does direct us to report back both on our priorities on a year-to-year basis and a budget. We did want to make sure that this is actionable again and not something that just sits on a shelf, and then that we're reporting on progress as well. All right, that's some of the media you can look at the plan in a little bit more detail. But from here, I'll just talk a little bit about what's actually in the plan. So as I mentioned, the plan is structured around 12 high-level goals, which are fairly broad. Again, they're sort of broad statements, and so an example of this is resilient and healthy community environments where residents thrive in place. From there, each of those goals has a list of strategies, a little bit more specific, and then the actions are slightly more detailed statements on policy or program ideas that will help fulfill that strategy and ultimately those goals. So if you remember earlier, I mentioned that list of topics that the plan covers, but you'll notice that the goals aren't really centered on any of those individual topics. And that's because we really wanted to highlight the intersectionality of sustainability. Again, issues like resilience and equity go throughout, and we wanted to make sure that we're not talking about these issues in a siloed way, really recognizing how they connect to each other. So I am not going to go through each of these, but these are the sort of high-level goals that we came up with that formed the structure of the plan. So kind of, relevant to our conversation today about resilience, resilient and healthy community environments, I mentioned that one, and also buildings and infrastructure that support human health and resilience. Here's the other second page with the rest of the goals. We do talk about a fossil fuel-free LA County, which is supportive of the Board of Supervisors' recent adoption of the Paris climate goals. They committed the county to achieving that, and so we do have a target in the plan about carbon neutrality by 2045. So a lot of our actions are in support of that as well. So these are just, again, some examples, more specific to how we talk about resilience in the plan. Again, for the resilient and healthy community environments, we talk about developing community capacity to respond to emergencies. And then, in terms of building capacity of retailers and small stores, but also looking at cooling centers. So there's a whole host of different actions that go into this. I should say, too, that what we ended up with was really more of a prioritized list. It's not everything under the sun that we could be doing to achieve those things. It would be a much longer plan if we tried to do that, obviously, but we did try to look at the actions that were more directly in the county's control or that we felt were high priority to sort of achieve these goals. All right. And in addition to the goals, strategies, and actions, we do want to make sure that we're able to measure our progress towards this plan. So we do also have a series of numeric targets. I should note that these are region-wide targets. They're not really something that any one county department is necessarily in charge of meeting, but these are sort of the things that came out of our stakeholder process as important things to tackle. So CERT trainings, we were talking about that before lunch, or during lunch, but this is definitely a key strategy that we look to develop that community capacity to respond to disasters. All right. And so, this is just a quick screenshot, and I would invite you all, if you can, there are printed copies of the plan and sort of a PDF, but the plan really lives online on the website, and you can, even though there are those intersectional goals, you can kind of arrange it any way that you want to look at it online, either by topics, by lead departments, by the horizon. So we have we have a short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. So if you want to look at sort of what our initial priorities by 2025, you can arrange it that way. So this is just kind of a sample of some of the actions and kind of what the website looks like as well. These are also some of the key resilience-related actions as well. And then I'm going to close up pretty soon here. I don't want to take up too much time, but yeah, as I mentioned, just in terms of our timeline, so we did bring the plan to the board in August, and it was adopted. In August, as I mentioned, they did give us several pieces of direction in terms of report backs. Right now, we're in the middle of our first process of priority development, and our goal is to bring that back to the board for adoption by February. That'll include budget recommendations and the work that we plan to do over the next year, and then with an annual progress report in August, coming back to them to report on what we've done over the past year. There are definitely opportunities to get involved, and we definitely invite everybody here to follow that process. We're going to be doing a stakeholder workshop to look at that priorities report, which should be released publicly for review. We want to continue the work that we did engaging stakeholders around our work throughout the plan implementation process now. So with that, I'll close, but I don't know if we're taking questions or how that works, but I'm happy to take any questions. Okay, there's a few minutes for that. Okay, thank you. But that's it. Thanks.